Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to discover the real you, then do we have the Collected Letters of Alan Watts show for you. Today I'll be speaking with Ann Watts, certified hypnotherapist, educator, facilitator, and counselor, the daughter of Alan Watts and the co-author, along with her sister Joan Watts, of the Collected Letters of Alan Watts. And that's just what I want to talk with her about today, about Alan Watts' journey to discover his real self and help you discover yours as well. That, plus we'll talk about Aunt Gertrude, Rowan Tree Cottage, Obie the Rabbit, Farrington's in Chislehurst, and what in the world a cat named Boots has to do with anything. So welcome to the show, Ann. Are you ready? Gotcha. To shine.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Ann. So before we dive right into things, how many children did your dad have?
My dad had 7 children. Yeah.
And how many from your mom?
My mom had 2 of us, and then she had a third child who was actually the child of our stepfather, Carlton. And my dad had 5 more children with his second wife, Dorothy.
So it's a
Tia,
good
Mark,
family.
Ricky, Leela, and Diane.
Very cool. A good Christmas gathering, I imagine.
Well, we were very separated, so we never got together as all of us together in that way. Yeah.
What do people say when you introduce yourself and they find out you're one of Alan Watts' daughters?
Well, there are some people who've never heard of Alan Watts, which is great. For years I would never say that I was Alan's daughter, because what I discovered was that people would all of a sudden, you're the daughter of Alan Watts? And it all became about Alan and, that imprint. And so they were seeing Alan and not me. And so for years, I didn't say it. I had one woman once ask if she could touch me. And for me, that was just, that was like, ew, too much. And so it's the thing that I love is how much people experience that his work has given them a tool to transform their lives. And I hear it all the time. And I'm just in the moment in conversation with a 15-year-old from Denmark who is fascinated by Alan's work. And, that to me is so special. So I'm really enjoying that piece of it. When people talk to me and they say, your father's work was transformational for me or whatever, I love hearing that. It's just that adulation thing that then now I'm not me anymore. I'm the daughter of. That's kind of creepy.
So let's segue from creepiness, and we're going to double back around to 15-year-olds, but we're going to keep it out of the creepy side of things. Oh God. So first off, where were you born?
I was born in Evanston, Illinois.
And approximately when was that?
1942, August 2nd.
And did you know at the time because everybody just looks at daddy as daddy. Did you know at the time that maybe not to you, but to others, he was different or treated different or anything of the sort?
Well, I certainly didn't know that when I popped out of the womb. As a little girl, our house was always filled with lots of people who were eager students of Alan's. And when I was born was during the era when he was an Episcopalian priest. And so the house that we lived in very soon after I was born, Canterbury House, had a chapel in it. And, we had a lot of gatherings of people, a lot of students and teachers and clerics and all kinds of people who would come and socialize with us. So I always knew that about that aspect,
Hmm.
right?
Were
Yeah.
you wanting to be around the conversations and soak it all in, or at the time you're so young, didn't sort of matter to you?
Well, I think at the time, it didn't particularly matter to me in that way. I think I enjoyed the company, but I wasn't particularly interested. As I got older, once we moved to California, and my father was dean of the American Academy of Asian Studies in San Francisco. In those years, he had a lot of people of different nationalities and students at the academy from all over the place, and I was always around a lot of that, and so I think I a lot of my life philosophies and stuff were shaped by what I overheard,
Hmm.
and but I wasn't like it never inspired me to become a student, right? I never was inspired to study Zen or follow that particular path. Um, but I think a lot of the things he says are things that feel like that's just who I am,
Hmm.
right? Um, and I think another thing I want to just say, it just came into my head, was that one of the things that's truly amazing for me is how what he has written, and he wrote all those years ago, is so current today. It feels like it's ageless. And sadly, a lot of his political views and his views about um, the environment and all of that kind of stuff, they're as pertinent today as ever. It's like we haven't progressed much, sadly.
I was reading his letters back from 1951, I can recall, and he was talking about it. It was specifically in 1951. He was talking about how communist China and Japan were now adopting our consumerist society and
Mhm.
what that would mean for the long term. And this is over 70 years ago.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. He was so aware. He was so aware of all those things, and so all of that is pertinent right here and
Mhm.
now. Yeah.
So,
So that's
So you study, you are there, you're paying attention to his work. It's not defining you in America. However, it may have helped steer the direction. Where did you want to go to study? What did you want to learn after that?
well. It's interesting. I went to girls' boarding school in England, and I was there from 12 to 17, and I lived on the holidays with my grandparents,
Mhm.
my father's parents, who were really lovely people. And so I got to live in his childhood home. And and when I came back to the United States, I didn't have a sense of direction. And I had always had this story that I would grow up, I would marry a homely man because who else would have me, and I'd be a mother because I knew I was good with children. And
Mhm.
that's that was like my aspiration. And when I came to California, um, I had decided to go to College of Marin and kind of explore what was there. And I worked at a wonderful bookstore called The Tides in Sausalito, which was a very popular and beautiful place to be.
Yeah.
And and so that's what I was doing then. And then I met the man who became my first husband, Joel Andrews, concert harpist, and fell very much in love. Far from being homely, he's a very beautiful man.
Yay.
And we had two children, uh, Mira and Michael. And so that part of it is what actually happened when at some point, Joel and I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina with our kids, where he was musician in residence at North Carolina State University. So we were living in Raleigh,
Mm-hmm.
and our marriage fell apart during that era, and so I knew I had to get work. And my first job was at a school for the deaf in Raleigh, and so I really loved learning sign language. And in very short order, because I didn't have any degrees, I was working as a paraprofessional, and but I became the person who was teaching language in the school, and I would make these. I'm not an artist myself, but I would create these drawings and stuff through tracery,
Yeah.
but with the sign language to send home with the kids for their parents, so their parents would learn some sign language, and so I did that for a long time, and I loved it. And then when I moved to California, the School for the Deaf was moving to Charlotte, and I decided to come home to California because this is where my heart is. Mm-hmm. And so what I ended up doing there, for a while, I interpreted for a little deaf girl in a public school in Point Reyes. I was living in Bolinas at the time. And then I got a job as a special ed assistant, and I worked with special ed students for a long time. And so that was my next career. And then during that time, I was dating a friend of my father's, Bob Shapiro, and he kept telling me about these workshops, the the Human Awareness Institute, and it was really clear to me that these workshops meant a lot to him. And the founder, Stan Dale, he had really impressed him, and I thought, well, if this means so much to you, I should find out about it. And he sent me to my first workshop. And when I did that workshop, I felt at home. I felt like I'd really discovered a philosophy that I could live and breathe. And I figured the only way I was going to do that was to keep coming back. And it had never occurred to me, being a leader never occurred to me. I was the kind of person who would sit in the back row, and I wouldn't speak, because unless somebody lit a match under me. But I liked to observe, that was my thing. But I was so impressed by the work, like I went home from that workshop, and the title of the workshop in those days was "What is Sex?" And I felt like, not only did things change in me in terms of my relationships with myself, my sexuality, and all of that, but there was a change in me in all levels of my life. And, I felt empowered in a way. Like, I'd been to lots of workshops. Everybody talks about transformation, and I never really experienced transformation. But I did this workshop, and I experienced transformation. And
Was
then
there one element, or how were things different that it shifted and empowered you?
Mostly how I manage my thinking. I think it's really important for us to be aware of the thoughts that we hang out with. And so, I learned from Stan a lot about what he used to call changing the channel. Like your thoughts are on this station, and you just decide, no, I'm not going to hang out there. I'm not interested in that program. I'll change the program. And so I would practice that. And I found that really empowering. And when I went back to the next level, to level 2 of the workshop, everybody said the same thing. And I thought, this work is really important. And so I became a team member. And then I went to Stan one day and I said, I want to learn to do what you do. so that this work can go on more places than you can be at one time and last after your death. And it was the most terrifying thing I ever did. It was the place where I learned you feel your fear and you do it anyway. It was like my passion for what happens in that room was so strong that I went through trial by fire, really, literally. It was intense. But I've been doing that now since 1985. And I love the work. I love what happens in that room. We call it the room of love. And so I love watching people, blossom. It's just like watching people open up. And so it's a gift. I feel gifted by the work I do.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
So speaking of passions, and thank you for sharing, this is important because this is planting seeds for people today. And it's important when you recognize that, you recognize something and you said, well, this is scarier than hell, but I got to go for it anyway.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I tell people that all the time. I always say, if I can do it, you can do it. It's like when you find that thing, and that was one thing that Alan was always talking about, do the thing that you love, right? Because that's where the juice is. And so many people do the thing that they feel that they have to do, the thing to make money, the thing to, like I got to be a doctor or a lawyer or what. And if you have a passion for that, that's a wonderful thing. I met a guy through the workshops who is a young doctor, and he loves what he does. He really loves it, and he gives that love to his patients. And that's magic. That's wonderful. Doing it because it gives you a good paycheck is not the thing. Doing it because you care passionately about people's health and well-being, that's a wonderful thing. Then that makes everything between the patient and the doctor lit up. It becomes very real. And I think too much of our culture is following that path that they're supposed to follow rather than what they love. And that's Alan talked about that all the time.
I was looking at fitness watches of all things earlier today. I'm trying to decide the right fitness watch. I was talking about this on another show with my co-host as well. And I found a watch that'll actually have a stress meter on it. And it'll actually show you your stress throughout the day, where it peaks and things of this sort. And I'm going to have to get that. It's because I want to see how I can take that stress level down even more.
Right.
But when you talk about, and what your father was saying about doing what you're passionate about and doing what you love versus something you feel you need to do, when you do that thing that you feel you need to do, my guess is the stress levels go way up and they never come down. So you may have the quality in terms of income, but you're not having the quality in terms of life, and your life may be shorter because of it. If you do the thing you love, your stress levels may go up as well, but I guess they're going to come down on occasion as well, and you're going to have more quality in the life that you have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, when you talk about the stress, yes. And what I noticed is one of my greatest teachers was when I gave birth. And the thing that they were teaching was to go with the pain. Don't fight it. Just breathe with it, right? And so what I experienced was that the pain wasn't less, but my relationship to the pain was entirely different. Not fighting it, going with it. So, I think the more that we can embrace all of the places of our humanness, including our stress, including our hurts or our anger or all of those things that are supposedly negative feelings, when we learn to go like, oh, wow, I'm feeling really angry, and embrace the fact that I'm angry rather than being reactive to it, then I get to find out, so what's causing this? Why am I angry, and what's it all about? But giving myself the space to feel the anger, not having to put a lid on it or pretend it doesn't exist, but getting that in this moment, this is what's so for me. And that's just a piece of my philosophy that I think helps us have better lives.
I call that leaning into it, and I feel it's exceptionally important. I've had two NDEs in my life. The second one, I stopped breathing, and I had to manually breathe for an hour. Once I came back, I had to manually breathe for an hour before the emergency crews got there. And I was in excruciating pain, stuck in a creek, broken badly, bleeding badly. Had I tried to push the pain away, I never thought about it till this minute. Had I tried to push the pain away, that would have used up all available resources, and I would have stopped breathing because I had to do a breathing meditation. Breathe in light, send out love is what kept me alive. I wouldn't be here. But instead, I had to allow that pain to happen, to occur, and I'm still here because of it.
Yeah, yeah. How wonderful that you had that tool.
I would literally, if I hadn't been able to go to the breath, I wouldn't, the body
Right.
stopped. It had flipped
Yeah.
the off switch. And what was really cool, it wasn't a tunnel light or anything, but it was in this brilliant Lake Tahoe day. And I'm looking at this white light of a sun above me, and I'm like, breathe in all the sun you can, send out love. And I was giggling in the most horrific pain by the time the emergency workers got there. And then I
Wow.
broke out laughing when they went to give me some morphine. And one of the guys actually shot the needle to put the air out of the morphine, out of the needle,
Right.
and it
Right.
spritzed into the firefighter behind him. And he goes, I've been hit. And I thought, so to speak, God did this to give me a Keystone Cops laugh moment, to give me the adrenaline I needed, because there was no blood pressure on me at that point.
Right.
And I lived.
Yeah, really. I love that. That's great. And in my experience, laughter truly is a great healer. It does make a difference. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
So let's go from there and let's talk about these letters. First off, how did your sister and you decide we're going to make a book with his letters, and where did they all come from?
Well, it's interesting. We inherited these letters when Alan's third wife, Jano, died.
Mhm.
And so she had them all in boxes, and she'd had them in storage. And some of them didn't make it there'd been a flood in the storage unit, and some of them didn't make it, but so many did. And it's fascinating. Alan kept carbon copies of all the letters he wrote. And so there they are, right? It's an amazing collection. And Joan had come out to California from Montana, where she lives, and we were visiting our publisher at New World Library, Jason Gardner, and we were talking about books that they were reprinting or whatever they were doing, and of Alan's. And Joan mentioned that she had this collection of letters, and he just lit up and he said, "Wow, we should publish those letters." And so Joan and I decided we would take on doing the work ourselves of editing the letters. And so she did the work. She had somebody help her put all of it into the computer, right? And then we read every letter, and it was a lot of work and an extraordinary process. Yeah, and the thing is that they're fascinating, and choosing what letters not to put in there was not an easy thing because they're all so interesting.
I couldn't even
And
imagine.
yeah, and so we had to ones that weren't really filling in information about what was going on with Alan, like letters that he wrote about where he was lecturing and when, and what book he was writing and things like that. We kept a lot of that in there. But there were letters that we decided, no, we don't need to do that. And then some of the letters, we edited out bits that were either repetitive or just not necessary to tracking his life story. Um, I loved how he wrote about the America that he was seeing, and all of the nature and all of that. He writes in such a way that you actually can see it, right? And he actually thought that he was going to be an artist. He was really quite an artist, and you could see as that 13-year-old when he did that drawing that we have in the book of the
Yeah.
rabbit parade for his dad, and it's so beautifully drawn, and then we have various other things that he drew throughout the book, and so like clearly he everything came through him in that very visual way as well, and so his writings are beautiful in that way. They're just really beautiful. Um, yeah, so that's how the book came into birthing.
And it's a phenomenon. Birthing is a proper word. It's a very big, substantial book. And I
Mhm.
spoke with you before the show, and I pride myself in getting through everybody's book before the show. And
Right,
this one, I swear, and I did not fully make it through it. Each letter is its own treatise, its own letter, it's its own lesson, its own teaching. And if you try to rush through it, you don't get the juice.
right, right. Yeah, there's so much, and yeah. So I mean, some of the things for me, I just got how brilliant he was at
Mhm.
such a young age. I'd be reading some of his early letters, and I'd think, "How old were you when you wrote this?" Right? And I'd have to stop and figure out what age he was, and I was, like, gobsmacked.
There was a letter that he had to Mr. Sokayan Sasaki, if I get that right.
Sokion Sasaki. Yeah.
Sokiyan
Right,
Sasaki. And he's
right,
talking about the vanishing of the I and the
mm,
self. And
right.
maybe you can even share about that. But he wasn't even, I don't think, 14.
I can't I have to look it up and see the date, but, um, yeah, it's one of those amazing letters that he wrote, and little did he know he had a few back and forth letters. Little did he know that Sokion would later become his father-in-law, because my mother's mother, Ruth Fuller uh, Everett, and then Sasaki, she married him. Um, I mean, that was an interesting connection that he didn't know was going to happen. And I think I'll take this moment to share this book that has just come out.
Zen
It's
Odyssey.
called Zen Odyssey: The Story of Sokion, Ruth Fuller Sasaki, and the Birth of Zen in America, by Janica Anderson and Stephen Schwartz. And this book is such a lovely story. It's written in a story fashion, but deeply well researched by Janica. She just did amazing, extensive research. So it took her years to get this book together. But it completely dovetails with our book. Um, because the stories overlap. So when Alan and Eleanor met in London at the Zen Society and the Buddhist Society in London, and then their relationship and Ruth's relationship with them, and all of that is in that book as well, from a different perspective. And so Joan and I are really excited. We're like, wow, this is amazing to have these two books come out at the same time.
It's also very interesting how things weave and do this. I don't know if you call it a karmic dance, but there is definitely something going on for those pieces to be coming back full circle to each other.
Right, right. Yeah. So anyway, so in this book,
Mhm.
when Joan and I did our book, we only put letters that Alan wrote, except a couple that our mother wrote to Henry Miller. Um, but we didn't put anybody's responses in there because it gets to be too complicated. However, in this book, there is Sokion's writing to Alan.
You've
So
got to
we
get both
So you
books.
right, so you get to fill in the picture. Yeah.
From there, I want to talk about some key lessons that Alan shares. But before we do that, it kind of falls into the laughter that we've got going here. Why did Alan call himself an entertainer, trickster, and coyote?
Well, one thing is, I mean, he knew that he had a gift for talking
Hmm.
as well as a gift for writing. He knew it was a gift, and he loved it. He loved doing that. He would talk forever. I mean, he could just, and what was amazing was, for instance, when he did his TV shows or his radio shows, he had no notes. He would go in there and he would just say the words that he had to say, and he would stop right on time. Like he just, it was a gift, but it was his love of it. And, he never wanted to be put on a pedestal. And so he would tell people, don't do that. Don't put me on a pedestal. And I'm not this guru person. I'm an entertainer. And because he loved it, and he was very playful, and he loved to laugh, he loved to sing, he loved to dance, like he was full of the joy of life, right? And he also worked really hard. He would spend hours writing or whatever, but mostly I think it was that he wanted people to get the lightness of being, and not take themselves so seriously, you know, or him so seriously, like lighten up. And I know that people, when people find out about that he was an alcoholic, or that he was a womanizer, or whatever they find out about Alan, that were the things that were what we would call his weaknesses, his addictions. I say he was addicted to alcohol and women. You know, one of his mistresses, wonderful poet Jean Burden, said women were like catnip for Alan, and I loved that. I thought, yeah, that's so true. And but the thing is, it doesn't take him off the pedestal in the sense that his writings have made such a difference in the world. There are several Facebook sites, Alan Watts fan sites, and people from all over the world are on those sites. And all of those people are because they love his work, and what it opens up for them. And because he had human failings, does that mean that should just go away? I don't think so. I think that the work stands for itself, and it's incredible. And he gave this gift that's a lasting gift to the planet.
You,
And so it's a long answer to your question.
it's all right. And you could say that all of us, even somebody as prolific as your father, who is living, eating, drinking, imbibing this, we still have our challenges. We're still going through the human experience no matter what.
Right. We're all human. We're all human. And I say that to people all the time. I'm constantly telling people, you are equal to anyone on the planet.
Mhm.
You are equal to anyone on the planet. And, some of us have skills in certain areas. I have my skills, you have your skills, Jane has her skills, Mark has his, like everybody has what they're good at, and what they give the world. And just because they're not good at what I'm good at doesn't mean they're any less than me, you know?
Woohoo!
So, right.
What did he teach about discovering the real you?
Well, I think what he taught was acceptance of who we are, how we are,
Mhm.
right? And to stop fighting it, to stop pushing the river uphill. Um, it's I've spent a lot of my life working on doing personal healing and personal growth, and I think my father, he was an avid student, but he wasn't. And he was an avid student to the day he died. He was always fascinated and learning more about the universe and how it works and all of that. And but he wasn't into pushing the river uphill,
Mhm.
right? He really was into uh, the thing I said before: relax and enjoy, right? And take yourself more lightly, and just be with what is. Be, the old "be here now" thing, that was so popular in the '60s. That was really a big theme for him, I think. When you read through the lines and all of that. Um, yeah. How did it strike you? Curious.
I think he both wants you to be genuine to who you are and at the same time realize the divinity that's within each one of us and that makes up all of us as one. We are all that divine at the same time.
Right. Beautifully said. Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
So, can you actually expand upon that? That is one of his key teachings. Um, the lack of separation there.
Right. Well, I think that the more he studied what was coming up scientifically,
Mm.
that that science was discovering how we are all the same. So he loved this business of the microscopic vision, like zooming in to the very
Yeah.
cellular structure, and then zooming out to the universal view of things. And in all of that, the patterns that were all the same throughout everything. The patterns of life are repeated over and over and over on all different levels. And I think he really got that. He really saw that. Um, and I remember once he was talking about his views about reincarnation, and the image he used was of the ocean, and that each of us is a drop from the ocean, right? And we have this life, and then we're back in the ocean again,
Mm.
right? And reincarnation is, well, there's another drop that comes out of the ocean, and we're a part of that drop, right? And I loved it. I thought, yeah, that just landed for me as so. What a great thought about that. I really liked it. Yeah.
So, if you were to ask him before he passed away where he was going, what would he tell you?
I don't know what he'd tell me. Whatever it was, I think he was, I think he was happy to go there. I think the stresses of life really, really had gotten to him, and the stress of traveling a lot to make money, and always on the edge because he had so many children to have to provide for, and he was never able to provide as well as he would have liked to. He never had great gobs of money, contrary to what people might believe. And what I learned from him was how to live on little but live well. He really knew how to live well with few resources, and so, but I think it was very stressful for him, and I think he tried to quit drinking, and he was not successful at that. He made several attempts, and it was rough. It was rough going, and there were times when he would be off the alcohol, and then he would be back on it, And I think that addiction to women, again, was another thing that I think my thought about it is that it was hurtful to him that he hurt others,
Mhm.
right? He didn't know how to be different than how he was, and he wasn't willing to do the suffering that it would be to not follow through on his impulses.
Yeah.
And but I think it mattered to him that people got hurt because of his actions. And so I think of that as one of the reasons why he drank, you know. Because he told my sister once that he drank because that's the only time he liked himself.
Wow.
And that's such a painful thing to me. And, you know, I feel very sad that that was so for him. And so I just think he had so many layers. And, like all of us, we're all complex beings and we have so many different facets to the whole picture of who we are. And, and so he was a deeply caring, kind, considerate person, and, and a really good listener. Um, and people really respected that about him. And then I go back to the entertainer. I think about, he was in social gatherings all the time, and he was the life of the party, and but it wasn't like he didn't feel like he had to hog the spotlight. He would bring other people out, he was interested in people, he cared about people, so that also showed up.
What would you say was his central theme or mission that kept him going?
Boy, I don't know that I know the answer to that. um, I know. Again, I think it's that thing where he was doing what he loved to do. So he loved to learn, and then he loved to share what he learned with people. And he was really good at it. And I think that's the thing he was constantly doing, was sharing what he was discovering and learning with others.
Mhm.
And he did it really well.
What would you say is one, on top of being here now, which is also, Ram Dass back at the time,
Right.
what is one powerful message of his that sticks in your mind that really touches people today?
I hadn't thought about that.
Sorry to be putting you on the spot here, Anne.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've touched on it, and I think you've done that very well when you talked about that message of the word that's coming to me is love, of self acceptance,
Mhm.
of really um, being aware of our connection to all that is.
Mhm.
And I think that that was the thing he really wanted people to get in a big way. So thank you for saying it so beautifully.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
I was going to save this for just before the end, and you said it in a different way, but it might have a second meaning behind it. I was going to ask, are we the ocean or the waves?
Oh, I think we're all of it.
Woohoo! Best answer of them all.
Yeah, we're the ocean and the waves and the clouds and the sky and the air and we're all of it. So it's all completely interconnected. Yeah,
Beautiful. Uh,
yeah.
if I was to take off my coaching hat, because I always like to give people a homework assignment, something they can do to enrich their lives. So if I was to take off my coaching hat today and I was to put it on you, Anne,
Oh, dear.
another question that you fully expected today, Anne, what one homework assignment would you give people to help people?
Well, I think I would give people the homework assignment to be aware of what they're thinking and to notice the feeling quality in themselves when they're thinking the things that they're thinking, and notice how that is. Does it contribute to them feeling powerful and, like expanded? Or is it making them feel withdrawn and small, right? And I'm a great believer in people noticing what they're thinking and then noticing that they can change what they're thinking. And one of the things that I gave a client recently, and I'm doing it myself, is my life is easy. It's easy, right? Because I have this tendency to think it's too much. I've got too much on my plate. I can't do it all. And those are stressful thoughts, right? And those don't in any way have me feel better about myself. Whereas when I think my life is easy, and I'll do that in moments when I'm feeling pressured, I'll remember that. That's my little mantra. My life is easy. My life is easy.
I love it. I love
And
it.
it's so simple, right? It's just a simple thought. And yeah, Louise Hay, she was a big proponent of that. It's only a thought, and a thought can be changed. That's one of her things, And I think that's so powerful. Like, what are the thoughts that we're going to hang out with? And all that takes is us just being aware, and then making a choice. We get to choose. And I think we forget. I love the bumper sticker, "Don't believe everything you think." You know,
Amen.
it's like, don't believe everything that jumps into your mind. It's, and we have this tendency, I had the thought and therefore it's so. And we're not even conscious that we're doing that, but we do it all the time. And I think it's great for somebody to have that bumper sticker to call into question, right? The thoughts that we're hanging out with. And is it real? Is it true? Yeah. So that's the thing I would give people to
Woohoo!
take. Yeah. I just want to say that this book is, I'm reading it again myself, and I can't tell you how fascinating it is to me, how interesting it is to read. And I love that. I love that it's so interesting.
So, on that note, a perfect dovetail is, where can people go to find out more and to find the collected letters of Alan Watts?
Well, one place they can go is to my website, which is www.annewatts.com, ANNEWATTS. And because I have a thing about it, I have one of our reviews. I'll be putting more on. I just haven't had time to do that. But I have the connection to Amazon, and people can get it through Amazon. But I want to put a plug in for bookstores,
Thank you.
because I think bookstores are an amazing place, and they are struggling because of Amazon. And I want to encourage people to go to their local bookstore and see if it's already there, and if it's not, get their bookstore to carry it. And so that's one thing that I would strongly encourage.
And I would encourage that as well.
Yeah.
So if people didn't catch that, come on over. If you didn't catch Ann Watts, ANNEWATTS.com. If you didn't catch AnnWatts.com, come on over to InspireNationShow.com, and we'll get you over to Ann Watts, ANNEWATTS.com. Few last quick wrap-up questions for you. First off, my wife, she's the producer. She wouldn't let me get off the hook without asking a question for parents and their kids today. Any suggestions to help their parents and kids, or anything that Alan would say, do you believe, to help parents with their kids?
I don't think Alan would consider himself qualified. He didn't think of himself as a very good father, and the two sides of that is, one, he was constantly writing and working and lecturing and touring, and so he wasn't very available. When he was available, he was a lot of fun to be with. So that's a complex answer there. I want to say to parents, I sometimes I ask clients, "What's most important to you?" And they'll say, "My spouse and my kids." And how they're living their lives isn't that at all. It's like the spouse and the kids are at the bottom of the list. And I feel it's really important that parents pay attention to their children, allow them to be children, give them permission to be children and to be learning and to make mistakes. How else are you going to learn if you don't make mistakes? So celebrate their mistakes and help them learn, right? And we can learn so much from them. Children are so wise. And there's this thing, often, a parent will be doing something. They're in the middle of whatever it is they're doing, and the child wants attention. And I always say, stop what you're doing. Put a bookmark in it and get down to the child's level and pay attention. And you know what? It doesn't take very long. Within moments, they're like, oh, good, I've been met. And they go off to do the next thing. And then you can go back to what you're doing. And I think we rob ourselves and our children enormously when we say, go away, I'm busy, can't talk to you right now. I think that's a disaster. And so that's some advice I would have for parents.
Woohoo! It's
Stop, pay attention.
it's huge because when you do that, you are saying, I see you, I acknowledge you.
Yes,
And that changes everything about that child's esteem, their sense of worth, their sense that I matter.
exactly so. Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you. So a couple last
Yeah.
questions. First off,
Okay.
what personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
I think what I do in the love, intimacy, and sexuality workshops for the Human Awareness Institute, that's the number one thing for me is getting to be in a place of love with human beings and watch how they respond to that and watch them transform, so that I feel so fed by that. And the other thing, there are three things. So the second thing is nature. How much I love nature. It's so fulfilling for me every time I'm outdoors, breathing in the trees and the air and all of nature. Love going to the ocean, which is one of the things I love about living where I live because it's very close. And thirdly, my husband and my children and grandchildren. Like that they light me up, and so I feel so blessed in so many areas of my life. Yeah.
Woohoo!
Yeah, thanks.
And any last words of wisdom you want to share with people today?
Oh, I'll tell you what's present for me in that.
Mm-hmm.
We're living in very troubled times, a lot of upheaval and a lot for people pretty universally to be disturbed about. And I personally feel like I don't feel very powerful and able to make change, although anything that I believe in, I'm signing it and I'm participating in that. But I think the thing that we can do is to change our insides and to create internal peace. And I think that the more of us that are busy creating internal peace, the more that can spread. And so I think that's our mission possible, is to really choose to create internal peace. And that's what I work on a lot myself. Yeah.
Woohoo! That is huge because that's where the dominoes are going to fall. I don't believe the dominoes ever fall by what you do externally, because our external world is a reflection of what's going on inside of us.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Anne. This has been beautiful. This has been stupendous, and I love this book. I recommend it to everybody. Just don't try to read it the way that I did.
take your time. And it's a heavy book.
Yes.
Be prepared.
It can double as a beautiful doorstop or even self-defense mechanism.
Yeah.
So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get the collected letters of Alan Watts, and begin discovering your oceanness today, and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you so much, Anne.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this, and I wish you all the best.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!